Homage to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Welcome back, young friends, to another session in our Gradual Teaching series. We've been looking at the Buddha's gradual instructions on the heavenly realms. And this additional session is to help us make sure that we understand about Kamma and rebirth. So let's begin by looking at what is Kamma. So Kamma is wholesome or unwholesome volitional activities that produce good or bad results. So this is kusala kamma and akusala kamma. And volitional activities, this could be our actions, our deeds, our conduct, or our behavior. And so as we know, this comes in the form of our bodily actions, our verbal actions, and our mental actions. So we've talked about this before. And by volitional, the Buddha really means that this is about our intention, our volition, our intention behind why we do certain things. And that plays a very important part in this. So on the kusala side, by wholesome, we mean that it's rooted in non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion. And when we say akusala kamma, akusala being unwholesome, it means it's rooted in greed, hatred, and delusion. So when you look at that definition, you see that the Buddha really has this very strong relationship or basis for Kamma that is based on virtuous conduct, on morality. And you also see that there are principles of cause and effect. So you might have heard that before. So cause and effect really means that if you do something, if it's good, it has a good result. And if you do something bad, it has a bad result. So that's what it means by cause and effect. There's always a result or consequence of one's volitional actions. Now, when we say Kamma is important to understand, well, we can look at the Buddha's teaching on right view. And this is in the Samaditthi Sutta in Majjhima Nikaya, Discourse number 9. The Buddha says, when friends, a noble disciple, understands the unwholesome, so this is the akusala, and the root of the unwholesome, the wholesome, which is the kusala, and the root of the wholesome, in that way they are one of right view, whose view is straight, who has unwavering confidence in the Dhamma, and has arrived at this true Dhamma. So we can see that Buddha is emphasizing that it's very important to know the difference between kusala and akusala, so wholesome and unwholesome, and to know the difference about where they are coming from, what is the root of it. Because if we don't understand that, then we don't think that there are any consequences for our actions. So that's a very important thing when it comes to the Buddha's teaching. The idea about Kamma has become a lot more mainstream, and as a result, what you find is a lot of misconceptions about Kamma. So by mainstream, what we mean is you see it as part of dialogue in TV programs or movies. You sometimes hear it referred to in the news. You also hear people talking about it a lot, and also people write about it. Now, that can be a good thing if it is based on right view, but if it's wrong, then people get really confused about Kamma. So on the light side, it could be that they talk about it with some partial truth, but then they veer off in terms of where it goes. Or it can be completely wrong. So we have a few things on this list. It's not exhaustive, but it gives us a bit of an idea about where people can get it wrong. So the first one that people talk about is fate or predetermination. So by this, people believe that things are just simply fated or predetermined in some sense. But as we saw from the definition, Buddha has said that it's actually something that it's due to our actions, our behavior, our volitional actions. So if we do good things, then we get good results. If we do bad things, we get bad results. Of course, it's not as simple as that. There is certain things that we've done in the past that is almost like our bank balance in terms of our karmic bank balance. But you can see that whatever we do, even in our present life, can change what happens in this life and in the future life. So it's not predetermined or fated. There might be an aspect about past actions, but it's not completely true that things are predetermined. Now,
when it comes to the law of attraction, sometimes people talk about this in relation to karma, and they think you can just simply attract good results. And this is, of course, again, not completely true, because yes, you could attract good people around you if you have good intentions and those sorts of things. Likewise with bad intentions and bad company. But it's not really that direct kind of relationship that the Buddha talks about. That really Buddha talks about we are the owners of our karma, heirs of our karma. And so it's really important to know that our actions through body, speech and mind are what determine results. So it's not really about law of attraction. And then the other thing that people talk about is karma is accidental. And this is completely wrong, because karma, as Buddha has defined, is really around volitional actions or behavior. So things don't happen by accident. You can't call this karmic. It's actually due to certain behaviors and conduct, which are either wholesome or unwholesome. So there's no accident about it. There is a cause and there is an effect. And then the fourth one that people refer to in terms of karma is like this moral justice. So if you look at the cartoon on the slide, there's this person saying, I believe in karma. That means I can do bad things to people all day long and I assume they deserve it. So sometimes people get this really wrong end of the stick, that because people are doing bad things, so you witness somebody else, that means you can mete out karmic moral justice. And this is also completely not the right idea. So one should never adopt that kind of attitude, because it's not quite right. Now, the last one is this idea that karma is based on a simple linear formula. And what we'll see when we go through Buddha's teachings is that it is not simple. Buddha talks about karma as something very, very complex. In fact, it is Buddha's special knowledge. So it's not something that us as human beings or other beings can easily understand. And when you look at people's questions to the Buddha, particularly around karma, they get all kinds of interesting questions, and Buddha just, evens them out, irons out all their wrong views about it. And it's very clear that it's not a simple linear formula. And I think what we'll do is we'll look at some of this complexity so we understand it better. Throughout Buddha's teaching, Buddha keeps talking about karma needs to be understood. So a very good sutta for this is the Nibbedika Sutta, Anguttara Nikaya chapter 6, discourse number 63. So he's always encouraging us. And so there's a number of aspects about karma that he says that we need to understand. So the source and origin of karma, the diversity of karma, the result of karma, the ending of karma, and the way that leads to the ending of karma. These things need to be understood. So he opens by saying, it is volition that I call karma, for having willed one acts by body, speech and mind. So what he's saying here is that what we intend, what is our volition, what is our will towards our actions, is very important in terms of what he calls karma. Then he goes on to talk about source and origin of karma. So he says contact is the source and origin. So when we make contact, that's when either our mental actions, our verbal actions, or our bodily actions kick in. Then the Buddha goes on to talk about the diversity of karma. So let's read out what he says. He says, there is karma to be experienced in hell. There is karma to be experienced in the animal realm. There is karma to be experienced in the hungry ghost realm. There is karma to be experienced in the human world. There is karma to be experienced in the heavenly realm. And so this is called the diversity of karma. So we've already touched on that in our main talk about the heavenly realms. And then the Buddha says, and what is the result of karma? The result of karma, I say, is threefold. It is to be experienced in this very life, or in the next rebirth, or on some subsequent occasion. This is called the result of karma. So karma doesn't necessarily always ripen in the present life. If it doesn't, then it will ripen in the future. And this is due to a number of things. It could be the conditions. It could be also the factor is what we do in our present life. So if we continue to train in wholesome, virtuous activities, then what happens is it doesn't give the fertile ground for unwholesome karma to ripen. And then the Buddha says, and what is the cessation or the ending of Kamma? It is the cessation of contact, and that is the cessation of Kamma. So if you end contact, then it will be the ending of Kamma. So that's very interesting. And then lastly, the Buddha says, when a noble disciple thus understands Kamma, oh, hold on, I missed a little bit. He says, the Noble Eightfold Path is the way leading to the cessation of Kamma. So that's right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. So here, this is where we'll get to when we cover the Four Noble Truths. The Noble Eightfold Path, as the Buddha says, it's the way leading to the ending of Kamma. And as we know from studying the teachings of the Buddha before, it is also the ending of all suffering. And so the Buddha says, when you understand all these things, then that's how you understand Kamma. So we'll go a little bit more into some of the Buddha's teachings to actually give us a bit more of an idea about Kamma. We covered this briefly when we went through the main module on heavenly realms, but I thought I'd bring it back again because it's really good to make sure we understand the four kinds of qualities that mean we are born in a good destination or a bad one. So it's one thing to undertake the wrongdoing yourself by body, speech and mind, but remember that there's three other ways that you can also contribute to an unwholesome destination. So that's if you encourage others to do wrong things, if you approve of wrongdoing, or if you praise wrongdoing. So we need to be very cautious about how we make these kinds of Kamma. So it's really good that if you refrain yourself from doing wrongdoing, but also you refrain from encouraging others towards those wrong things, and also you don't approve of it, even in your mind, and you certainly don't praise it, and don't praise it out loud. So it's very good to make sure we understand that, because sometimes what we do is we may not do wrongdoing, but we consciously or unconsciously we approve or praise when people do wrong things, and that's actually not a good thing for us. And we certainly don't want to encourage people, given that if we understand Kamma, it's not good for other people either, whether they're our best friends or family members or even our so-called enemies, if we have them. We wouldn't wish that on someone to come to such a bad sort of result. In the Sankhita Sutta, the Buddha talks about four different kinds of Kamma. And the first is dark Kamma with dark result. The second is bright Kamma with bright result. The third is dark and bright Kamma with dark and bright result. And then Buddha talks about Kamma that is neither dark nor bright with neither dark nor bright results. Kamma that leads to the destruction of Kamma. So there's already some complexity in what Buddha talks about in terms of Kamma. So dark Kamma with dark results is when you perform dasa akusala, so 10 unwholesome conduct. So that's through body, speech and mind. What Buddha says is that you'll be reborn in a place that is exclusively hell. So any contact you make, it's painful, and any feelings you experience is painful. So the example that he gives here is if you're reborn in the hell realms. So you can understand that, like, even if you do one of the really grave misdeeds, you kill your mother, you kill your father, or even if you kill a Buddha, or even if you try and shed the blood of a Buddha or cause a schism in the Sangha, you'll immediately be reborn in the hell realms. So that's what happened to Devadatta, Buddha's cousin. He tried to harm the Buddha, and he also caused a schism in the Sangha, so he was spontaneously reborn in the hells. Now when it comes to bright Kamma with bright result, it's the opposite. It's when you cultivate dasa kusala, so the 10 wholesome conduct by body, speech and mind. So you end up in a pleasant place once you are reborn, and so you have pleasant contact and pleasant feelings, so it's exclusively pleasant. And the example that the Buddha gives is the Subrahma Kinha realm, which is the devas of refulgent glory. And so that's what Buddha calls bright Kamma with bright result. And then the third one, dark and bright Kamma with dark and bright result. The example that the Buddha gives here is being reborn in the human realm, or in some of the deva, or like the immediate deva realms, and also for some beings in some of the lower realms as well. So the Buddha says here, it's when you have a mixture of kusala, akusala in terms of your conduct. So some of it is wholesome, some of it is unwholesome. And the result will be being reborn in a place where you can experience both pleasure and pain. And that can be through contact and feelings. It's a mixture of pleasant and painful. And so that's why if you think about this human realm, we do get to experience both pleasure and pain. And so that's as a result of having done certain things in the past. That is a mixture of both wholesome and unwholesome conduct. So that's what the Buddha calls dark and bright kamma with dark and bright result. Then the final one, the Buddha says, you have the volition for abandoning the kind of kamma that is dark with dark result. You also have the volition for abandoning the kind of kamma that is bright with bright result. And the volition for abandoning the kind of kamma that is dark and bright with dark and bright result. So this is called kamma that is neither dark nor bright, with neither dark nor bright result, kamma that leads to the destruction of kamma. From what we've been through so far, you can already see that kamma is not an easy linear type of equation. And you get this idea that it's similar to having a bank account, a karmic bank account, that what we've done is deposit into our bank account deeds which are good and bad. And we've accumulated these things over time. And we don't really know what our bank balance is. And even in this lifetime, what we're doing is we're still making deposits into the bank account. And Buddha is really saying that at some point, when the conditions are right, we ripen the result, either in this lifetime or in subsequent lifetimes. So it's kind of another way of looking at it, and to know that it's not simple. And so this next sutta that we look at is called the Kamma Sutta. And what's interesting about this sutta is it goes into old kamma and new kamma. So it helps us to understand a little bit better subtle nuances, little things that the Buddha is trying to make us see. So the Buddha asked the bhikkhus, and what bhikkhus is old kamma? The I is old kamma, to be seen as generated and fashioned by volition, as something to be felt. And he says the same thing for the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. So what he's really saying when he talks about old kamma is that what we understand to be this body and all its sense faculties, we have constructed it based on our past volitional activities. So that's old kamma. What we did before, the result is this particular body that can feel and sense all these things right now. And then the Buddha goes on to say, and what bhikkhus is new kamma? And then Buddha says, whatever action one does now, by body, speech and mind, this is new kamma. So this body is the old thing, and whatever we do right now is what's going to happen in this lifetime or have results in future lifetimes. So you can see it's very important that we know that there is something very empowering about kamma, that it's not something that just happens. We influence what happens next. And so having created this body, it's not fait accompli. It means that you actually need to train, develop in the wholesome way, because then you get wholesome results. And so if we don't want nefarious things or a bad result, then we need to make sure that we are very clear about our intentions and our volition in what we do each and every day. And then the Buddha ends, of course, by talking about the cessation of kamma, which we've covered before, that it's really when you reach nibbana, some kind of liberation, through the ending of any bodily, verbal or mental action. So that's the ending of kamma, and the way to get there is the Noble Eightfold Path. So as we've seen, we have some sort of karmic balance, and the Buddha starts to use these words that we are the owners of our kamma. So we own that bank account. We're the heirs of that kamma. So we're the heirs of that bank account. And the Buddha actually, we looked at this sutta. This is the Sangsapaniya Sutta. We were looking at this when we were learning the Metta School meditation, because we're looking at why is it important to be upright and very upright. And we use this sutta to understand that when we are having crooked bodily, verbal and mental actions, so we have the unwholesome conduct, the dasa akusala, then we can expect a crooked destination. And with a crooked destination, then the rebirth is crooked. And so when there are those two things, Buddha says that there are two destinations that can be experienced. The first is exclusively the painful hells, and the second is a species of creeping animal. And so those animals, the examples he gives are snakes, scorpions, centipedes, mongoose, cat, mouse, and owl, and any other animals that creep away when they see people. So that's another thing for you to think about, that sometimes we look at certain animals and insects and think they're cute, or we don't understand that they are the owners of their karma, that they have done something in the past that's not very good. Like if you take cats, for example, a lot of people have cats as pets. But if you really look at a cat, whether they're an indoor cat or not, they normally go outside and what do? They love to kill. They can't stop killing. Even if you try and teach a cat not to kill, it will kill. So you can see that their conduct is very crooked and they have almost like no choice about it. And then you look at insects, you always see them creeping away when a human comes or any other insect comes. It's like they just have to leave. So it's good to actually think about these things, because then we don't misapprehend that beings are reborn, whether they're reborn into animal realm, because those are what we can see, that there are reason for that. And some are lower rebirths as well. So this is also another way of understanding, and also to understand that Buddha encourages wholesome conduct, so we don't leave ourselves open to the opportunity to actually be reborn in these places, because it's not what we think it is. Also, what's interesting is that the Buddha does encourage each of us to actually develop the divine eye, that it is possible for us to do that. Because what the divine eye does is that it's something so pure, and it surpasses even our human eye, that you can see where beings are reborn. So you see them passing away, and you see them being reborn, and you can see them being born into inferior or superior rebirth, whether they're beautiful or ugly, whether they're fortunate or unfortunate. And then you come to understand how beings fare in accordance with their karma. And you really see this cause and effect principle. You see that because of misdeeds that they've engaged in through body, speech and mind, and if they have the wrong view, and when they pass away, you see that they're born into a bad destination. Likewise, you also see if someone gravitates and establishes themselves in wholesome conduct and they have the right view, then what happens is you can see also that they get the good result and they're reborn in a good destination. So Buddha says it's possible to train in this and to be able to see it. So if you refine your practice of meditation and you start to really understand the Buddha's teachings, then this is something that you can actually see for yourself. We can end the session with this final teaching from the Buddha, and it comes from the 5 frequent recollections, that the 5th one is that we must frequently contemplate Kamma. And the Buddha says that this is for the benefit of a woman or a man, so a young girl or a young boy is included in this, a householder or one who has gone forth, so a monk or a nun as well. That if we contemplate, I am the owner of my Kamma, the heir of my Kamma, I have Kamma as my origin, Kamma as my relative, Kamma as my resort, I will be the heir of whatever Kamma, good or bad, that I do. So essentially what Buddha is saying is, if you think about that karmic bank balance that each of us has, so that's a personal bank account, then we are the owners of it. That is what we inherit. That is our relative, our resort, and that's where we come from. So when we do good or bad things, the result of it we will experience, because that is a personal account, personal bank account. So when the Buddha says you reflect in that way about karma, I'm the owner of that bank account, I'm the heir, and so on and so on, Buddha is saying that it encourages us when we do bad things through body, speech and mind, that we recognize that we will be the owners of it, that the result of whatever that is, we will be the owners of it in this lifetime or in subsequent lifetimes. And so in that way, if we keep reflecting on it that way and contemplating it, then whatever we do that is so-called misconduct on the unwholesome side, it will either be completely abandoned because we see the the relationship of cause and effect, or it starts to diminish. So it starts to lessen. We're no longer inclined to do it because we know that we will be the owner of that result. So it's very, very helpful, and one to take away in terms of the importance of understanding and contemplating Kamma. We can end our session here. Let's share the merit with all sentient beings. May all beings be happy and well. May all beings be free from suffering. Blessings of the Triple Gem. Wishing you well, young friends. Teruan Saranai.